Is February 18, 2024. Another beautiful Sunday. It's a little rainy over here in Florida, but nonetheless, it's going to be a nice day. We're going to discuss an amazing subject. I have to say, this is kind of a special session for us because we've been waiting to have this. We want to welcome Miss Jacqueline Claire. She is speaking today on a pretty important subject, and for those of you who haven't already seen her YouTube videos on her own YouTube channel for Jacqueline Claire, we are going to introduce an amazing person with a lot of content that we think you should also share. Now, this week's topic is unlocking personality to transcend self, the Baha'i Faith, and the Enneagram, a virtues-based approach. Jacqueline Claire's upcoming talk this Sunday, what we're about to cover, promises to be a profound exploration of self-awareness and spiritual growth. In this session, Jacqueline will delve into how the Enneagram, a dynamic personality system, can serve as a tool for deeper self-understanding and personal development. By integrating the wisdom of the Baha'i Faith, she will discuss how aligning our understanding of personality with spiritual virtues can guide us toward transcending our limitations and fostering a more unified, compassionate, and enlightened self. We are really hoping that during this presentation, you'll find quite a bit to take away from this and start your own spiritual discovery. Now, Jacqueline Claire is a visionary artist and a podcaster. She is dedicated to awakening inner joy, courage, and spiritual consciousness. So I'd like to also just shout out here that Jacqueline Art, the website, jacquelineart.com, it's got quite, jacquelineclaireart.com, sorry, jacquelineclaireart.com. It's got an amazing roster of what Jacqueline does. And not just that, my family personally bought a book from her called Noble Beings. It's a beautiful little book for children, speaking about the noble beings that we are born as. We are spiritual beings living a physical life here, and teaching them that from childhood. It's just really good to surround them with positive information. Now, utilizing a rich palette of fine art, illustration, public speaking, and spiritual discussions, Jacqueline strives to forge a deep connection between individuals and their spiritual selves, fostering a profound recognition and valorization of the inner spirit. And you can find that, for example, in her beautiful art, where she incorporates what she calls spiritual realism into her art. And again, you can find this on jacquelineclaireart.com. Her endeavors are keenly aimed at empowering youth through initiatives like a children's book, the one I described, designed to lay a robust foundation of spirituality and happiness from a young age. Jacqueline is a firm believer in the power of art and spiritual teachings to cultivate a resilient generation, potentially mitigating future emotional burdens by embedding a sense of their inherent value early on. At the core of Jacqueline's vocation is the production of new artwork, highlighting the essential role of serenity and time in her creative process. She regards her artistic journey as a sacred partnership where peace of mind is pivotal for tapping into inspirational flows, unhampered by the demands of productivity or apprehension. Jacqueline is also committed to deepening her connection with her audiences via superior audiovisual materials and live engagements. Her goal is to not only enhance the quality of her presentations, but also to make the profound messages of the Baha'i Faith more accessible, thereby broadening its influence and reach. Lastly, as an artist fully immersed in her craft and spiritual exploration, Jacqueline aspires to make a meaningful difference, hoping to be remembered as a pivotal figure in both the realms of art and spiritual enlightenment, illuminated by the principles of the Baha'i Faith. Now, just before we get started with this presentation, just want to mention those videos that are on YouTube definitely are worth a watch. The ones that Jacqueline Claire has put online. She talks about a lot of subjects, and really she tries to focus on a lot of important subjects that are spiritually valuable to us, but through building bridges, trying to strike a unifying tone and not one that aggravates the listener. truly a middle way as Baha'is are supposed to take. Now, I want to ask a question, Jacqueline, as we get started here, and I think if we could put the slides up, it'd be a good place to start. I have a question.
Sure. You want me to go and put the slides up? I will do so.
Yes, please. And again, we are so happy to have you here today. I want to ask a question. What is an Enneagram?
Absolutely. That is a very relevant question. I bet several people are wondering that. And let me go ahead and answer that. But first, I just want to thank you for that beautiful introduction and thank the Clearwater Baha'is for everything that you guys are doing to host these classes and then have this really great content live online on YouTube for people to find. And also just let everyone who's participating live know that I'm really glad you're here, and you'll have a chance to ask questions towards the end. And that's also beautiful because you're influencing what this material is. So the Enneagram, we will get much more into it, but I will say it is a personality typology system, and it has ancient, actually somewhat mysterious origins, and it's fascinating in and of itself. But basically, it's a very simple way to understand some very complex phenomena of how personalities are formed and how it influences our character. And we are going to be using this as a tool to help us develop our virtues, which is a very important Baha'i principle. You know, sometimes we focus so much on doing, and we focus so much on social action and social issues, but the Baha'i Faith is meant for the transformation of our characters, like first and foremost, and then from there we change in the world. It's a dual process, but character is essential. And so we're going to use the Enneagram as a tool to help us grow as individuals so that we can fulfill all of those principles as Baha'is.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah. John, should I go ahead and dive in? Are we ready? Is
Yes,
everyone
let's get
ready?
started. Again,
Yeah,
thank you,
awesome.
Jacqueline. We're so happy to have you here today.
Yeah, thank you. My pleasure. And I think we're going to have a lot of fun today. And the goal here is to leave everyone with something very useful and practical. So this is not an exploration that begins with words and ends with words. I hope you will leave with clarity and practical tools to better your life. Okay. I would like to make a little pitch here. I don't know if you guys can see the QR code, but if you enjoy spending some time with me today, I hope you will join me in 19 Days of Inspiration, which is a project I do every year during the fast, daily art and devotional emails. And this is the 7th year, so we will be celebrating by taking a journey through the 7 valleys of Baha'u'llah every day of the fast. And you can sign up with the QR code, or later I can drop in the chat the sign up. So I hope
And
you guys
please,
join me.
friends, those of you who are on your phone, please take a screenshot. Or if you can't take a screenshot, kindly come back to the YouTube channel, Clearwater Baha'is. You'll find the QR code there. So you are welcome to view the QR code. It will be available online as soon as this presentation is over again.
Very nice. So we're talking about developing virtues. This is a word that Baha'is often use, but let's just make sure we're all on the same page about what is a virtue? What are we talking about? And you can even drop in the chat if you have a little definition, or maybe post some examples of different virtues. You may say a virtue is a positive character quality. You might say that it's an attribute of God, some sort of potential that's latent within us. And again, feel free to drop some examples. I'll rattle off a few, love, justice, forgiveness, courage, truthfulness. These are some examples of virtues. So before we go deeper, I want to ask you 3 questions, and I would like you to remember your answers. You're welcome to put them in the chat or just hold them close to your heart, but it will help you as we move through today's presentation. So the first question is, what do you think is your strongest virtue? What are you already really strong in? Next question. what is one thing? If everyone in the world would just do this one thing, it would make the world a better place. Could be an action, some sort of adjustment or mindset, but everyone would just do this one thing, it would make the world a better place. And the answer is completely your own. Okay, there's no right or wrong. So think about that for a moment. Kind of grab your answer and hold on to it. Yeah, that would make the world a better place. And lastly, what is a virtue that you feel you actually need to work on, that it would make your life better, your relationships better, if you were a little stronger in this virtue? Now, I'm imagining most people here are familiar with the Baha'i Faith, but briefly, let's just refresh. The Baha'i Faith is an independent world religion. Baha'is believe in one God that's called by many names in different cultures and traditions. Baha'is believe in one human family, in the teachings of Baha'u'llah, who brought a renewal of timeless spiritual law, as well as guidance specific to this day and age. And the aim of the faith, in my own words, is the spiritual advancement of the individual who then collaborate to build a just and spiritual world. Some people ask, well, what does Baha'i life look like? And again, in my own words, I would say that it is a balance or a combination of personal devotion, your private personal prayers and relationship with your creator, and then service and engagement in the outer world to practically try to improve the world, make it a better place. And if you think about it, these two aspects, personal devotion and service in the world, what connects these two, the place where these meet, is really our character. So with that, let's reflect on this from Abdul Baha. He was asked, what is the purpose of our lives? And he responded quite simply, to acquire virtues. The purpose of our lives is to acquire virtues. He says our distinction lies not in ornaments or wealth, but rather in virtuous behavior and true understanding. So there we have it, this like timeless question about what is the purpose and meaning of life? Well, Abdul Baha said it is to acquire virtues. So if this is so important, if this is the purpose of our lives, how are we going about doing this? How do we practice acquiring virtues? How do we identify what it is we need to work on? Do we simply wait for conflict to arise in our lives and then realize, oh, I have a blind spot here, I need to work on this? And that's good. That's natural. That's innate in the design of this world. But it's not always the best method because one, conflict is arising, and two, our human nature and conflict is usually to blame the situation or the other person rather than reflect on our part in it. So like, how do we practice and keep track of acquiring virtues? I find that often people are much better at teaching children this, talking about virtues, identifying them, practicing them, and following up than they are once they're adults. And we all know that we continue to need to work on this. So it's a good idea to define some virtues, to consciously practice them, and then reflect on how that's going. And that might feel like a familiar pattern to people engaged in Baha'i community life, to plan, to act, and reflect. So that opens the door to this tool that I'm going to be sharing with you today, which is the use of the Enneagram. So once again, the Enneagram is an ancient personality typology system. It actually has unknown origins. It represents 9 basic personality types. It's psychologically sound and sophisticated, yet very simple to understand. The study of the Enneagram has expanded by Sufis, various Christian denominations, and modern psychologists, and it is used for spiritual and secular counseling. So we are going to be using it to identify our personal strengths, our innate personality virtue strengths, and then most usefully, identify areas of focus for us as individuals to help us integrate all of the virtues. What handful of qualities can you focus on that will actually help you in developing all of the virtues? Because, of course, the ultimate goal is transcendence, or as the Enneagram would call it, integration, to have a fully integrated personality. And, as Baha'is, we might say that it is to become like Abdul Baha, or to become as spiritually evolved and mature and whole as we can be. And again, Baha'u'llah is telling us that the purpose of the one true God and manifesting himself is to summon all mankind to truthfulness, sincerity, piety, trustworthiness, resignation, and submissiveness to the will of God, to forbearance and kindliness, to uprightness and wisdom. His object is to array every man with the mantle of a saintly character. It's a high standard, and one which we should aim for. That's why it's been given to us. So, a couple of disclaimers before we proceed. The first, and I probably should have said this at the beginning, is that the Baha'i Faith and the Enneagram do not actually have anything to do with each other in a direct practical sense. The Enneagram is in fact much older, and we are simply using the wisdom of the Enneagram to help us delve into this Baha'i principle of acquiring and developing virtues. It is interesting that both the Enneagram and the Baha'i Faith are often depicted or represented by a 9-pointed star. So maybe there's some mystical meaning in there, and the points of both stars mean something, and we will be about meaning in the Enneagram. But kind of interesting, right? They're both represented by 9-pointed stars, but again, they are not directly related in any way. I am making the correlation today. And also, I am not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I am, in fact, a recovering actor. And as such, I do know a little something or other about human behavior and about human character. And also, the Enneagram was a science that I grew up with. My mom was very schooled on it, and she taught on it and so forth. But back to my background as an actor, it's good to remember, and this is something actors have to remind themselves, that we are all everything. Each one of us has the capacity for the highest and lowest in human nature. And so just keep that in mind. And also with the Enneagram, there are no good or bad types. The numbers do not represent a hierarchy. Each type operates on its own spectrum of mental and spiritual health. Our personality forms through our factory settings, just what we're born with, our innate qualities, our heredity, our early environment, or you could say nurture, and then the choices that we make in life. And Abdu'l-Baha confirms this: innate character, inherited, and then acquired character, which is gained by education. And that's what we're really doing today, is we're educating ourselves to refine our character. And keep in mind that in many ways, our choices, they work for us. So what we choose to lead with in the world, the personality that we lead with, those qualities, those decisions were made very, very early, probably before we were 10 years old. Most of our personality was formed, and those were based on little tiny infantile decisions about how we thought we would navigate in the world to receive reward and avoid pain. That's as simple as it gets. But as we progress along the spiritual path, we discover that our rigid personality patterns actually limit our spiritual potential. So at some point, it's time to stop leaning on our infantile choices and the rigid personality we form, and start to expand to become a more whole person, a more spiritually integrated. So now we will begin the Enneagram. You might have noticed that the 9-pointed star is actually within a circle. And to me, this circle represents totality. This is all of the virtues. This is a fully integrated personality that has all of the virtues of God in it. It doesn't have any one crutch that it's leaning on. And perhaps you would say that Abdul Baha was like this. Abdul Baha was not a type because he was the perfect example. He was the most transcended that a person could be. He had all of the virtues. And I love this passage. Baha'u'llah has drawn the circle of unity. He has made a design for the uniting of all the peoples and for gathering of them all under the shelter of the tent of universal unity. And I like to think that maybe this applies not only to unity between people, but also unity within people. I do apologize if you can hear the rooster. There isn't much I can do about it right now outside my window. All right, so I'm going to take us sort of a speed reading through the types of the Enneagram, okay? And we're going to go through it first from a psychological perspective. I'm going to be a little bit harsh in ways because I'm just trying to cut to the chase. And I am going to use a little bit of the language of archetype and stereotype a bit, again, just because our time is limited. And I want to be very clear about what dominates each of these types. And I hope that you'll start to see yourself in one of these. Then we will go through with a focus on the innate virtues of each type. And then I'll show you how to use this practically. Okay. So here are the types. We're going to start with type 1. Type 1 is known as the judge or the idealist. The one, it is dominated by this platonic sense of perfection. They have this sense of how things ought to be. They have this strong sense of right, wrong, good, bad. They often have very dry personalities. They're often in professions that involve numbers, like an accountant or a math teacher, because again, they see in black and white and that platonic sense of perfection, like they can do the math equation and know precisely what the right answer is. Like it's very logic driven personality. They tend to be very hard on themselves and very hard on others because, again, they have the strong sense of how things ought to be. If anyone's familiar with Les Miserables, there is a main character, the constable, who is pursuing the protagonist. And he dedicates his whole life pretty much to capturing this escaped criminal because it's black and white. The criminal was wrong, he escaped, and he should be incarcerated. And at the end of the story, this constable discovers that he himself was the daughter of a prostitute and a criminal. And he's so overwhelmed with shame by this because it's so outside of his beliefs, his hierarchy of what's right in the world, that he kills himself. Like, it's a very extreme literary example of a one. A one might relate to statements like, I put much effort into correcting my faults. I feel I have to be perfect before others will love me or approve of me. I seem to see things in terms of black, white, good, bad, right, wrong. So that's the one. Type 2 is known as the helper, the giver. They are all about love. They're all about the feels. They're all about nurturing and caring for people. They're often in professions like social work or maybe nursing. They want to fill the emotional needs of the world. And it's sort of a mother archetype. And obviously this type has many, many good qualities. This is one of the most obvious, virtue holders. But the dark side of the two is they can also be a bit of the devouring mother. They can give and give without necessarily being asked for the giving, and then they hold other people emotionally hostage. Like, I have given this to you, or I've loved you, and I demand that you love me back. So sometimes it's a bit unfair, and also their ego, if they're unhealthy, is involved in the giving. So they need to be the nicest person in the room, if they're not super spiritually healthy and aware of this. The 3 is known as the motivator, the performer, the role model, the achiever. Our culture really likes 3s. We like to put people up on a stage and put a spotlight on them and clap for them. And 3s love that as well. They're often like motivational speakers, like a Tony Robinson type. They want to be the best of their social milieu, and they want to inspire you that you can do that also. Many people in the entertainment industry are this type, as well as motivational speakers. Now, the downside of the 3 is that they are so good at projecting these, the highest of their social milieu, their project qualities, they're chameleons, that this can be at the expense of their actual development as individuals. And on some level, they know this or they fear this, and they're actually very insecure about that being discovered. The 4 is the quintessential, rather cliche artist type. They're all about truth and drama and beauty and melancholy and nostalgia. They are often very creative. They have a very strong sense of aesthetics. They do struggle with depression, kind of a sexy French depression type. They live in black and white and smoke cigarettes and live in Paris type as the cliche. I mentioned nostalgia. They're very fixated on their past, and they often feel very alone and like no one understands them. And they have a hard time with motivation in life. And there's something else I was going to say about the 4. Well, maybe it'll come back to me, but that's the sense, sort of the cliche artist with a strong sensibility for beauty and creativity as well. The 5 is known as the theorist, the researcher, the investigator, the thinker. All right. They live inside of their brain. They go deep, deep, deep down the rabbit hole of whatever it is they are interested in or seeking to discover or understand. There is a lot going on inside of their brain. And every now and then they might, I like to think of it, they're in the citadel of their brain. They're in this tower way, way beyond everyone else. And every now and then they'll peer out at you, and they might like investigate you a little bit. And meanwhile, they don't realize that they are socially very out of step with people. Often they're kind of the social oddball type because they're so into their thinking and what they're working out in their brain, and they're not very concerned with what other people think or trying to fit in. And they don't realize how they come across to people. They like to keep their feelings and their thoughts to themselves, and they really just like to be alone with their thoughts and their work and their research. The 6 is the loyalist. The 6 is the most common type in the Western world. Who knows why? Maybe it has to do with our school system and how we educate people. The 6 likes to be in a group. They find security and identity in their group. And the group could be their family, their religion, their industry, the military. It could even be their rock and roll band. Like there's many different ways of the shape it can take, but essentially they like to be in a group, be part of that group, be loyal to that group. They don't want to stand out. They have a very strong orientation towards authority, whoever they see as authority. And again, it could be somebody top in their field. It could be the president. It could be, ideally it's God or Baha'u'llah or Jesus. You have a spiritual orientation, but they have this very strong orientation towards authority. But they also simultaneously, the shadow side is they also have a rebellion against the authority. So there's always this tension if they're not at their optimal health, where they have this sort of yes-no personality. They want to be a good boy, and then they don't want you to take them for granted, so they might be kind of mean, and then they'll be good, and then they'll be mean. And they get a little bit of a yes-no because there's a lot of ambivalence baked into the cake of their personality, and there is also a fear mixed with that. So the 6 struggles with fear, where like the 4, the artist type, struggles with depression. Again, I'm speaking in very general terms just to help you get the picture. The 7 is the enthusiast. You see it here represented by a butterfly. Sometimes it's represented by a monkey. The 7 is just full of energy. They're very playful, full of joy. They like to tell stories. They're the life of the party. They might relate to the concept that if something is good, more of it is better. And the struggle with the 7 is they start too many projects. They have a hard time seeing things through because it gets old, or they overwhelm themselves. And they're also the most likely to struggle with forms of addiction because of that lust for life quality. They don't always know when to stop. And they are, on some level, all that joy de vie can be a reaction to some sort of pain, some very old pain, maybe some sort of deprivation from childhood, that on some level they make this decision that they'll never be deprived of anything again. And so they just go through life getting as much as they can, and being as on top of the world as they possibly can be all of the time. And they like to make other people feel that way as well. The 8 is known as the leader. They're a very strong, courageous, head-butting type of personality. The 8 is great if they're on your side. It's wonderful to have an advocate and a defender like an 8. The 8 is often very misunderstood, possibly the most misunderstood type. For one, they're seen as bullies and they're seen as mean. And sometimes they are, and sometimes they aren't. The thing with the 8 is that confrontation, headbutting, is actually an invitation to play. But most people who aren't 8s don't see it that way, and they just feel like they're being bossed around or railroaded or intimidated. And of course, the dark side of the 8 is that all of those can absolutely be true, and they can be the worst version of a tyrant, you know? Last but not least, we have 9, who's known as the peacemaker. 9s are come across as very chill, very relaxed, very detached people. They, in this funny way, they don't even put a lot of energy into speaking. Like, they might talk a lot, but they don't put a lot of energy behind their words. They're just real relaxed and chill about everything. And they kind of like to go through life like a pleasant bike ride. And they're pretty good at inspiring that same sense of calm in other people. They don't like to get too worked up about things. They tend to trust that things work out on their own, you know? The downside of the 9, of course, is that they can be overly detached and not put enough into their spiritual development or professional development, and they can be rather vacant or hard to reach in relationship. So they can be very frustrating because you kind of want to be like, hello, are you there? So that is a quick and dirty psychological overview of the basic types in the Enneagram. I hope that you're starting to see a little bit of what you might be, okay? You are a type, and the healthier you are, the less identifiable, the less trapped in those narrow confines you are. But the theory is everyone except Abdu'l-Baha and the manifestations are a single type, and you have been that type your whole life and will continue to be. So you don't hop around types, but you do grow to the point where you are not super identifiable, and you grow to encompass all of the virtues, right? That's our goal here. So now I'm going to go back through and I'm going to focus on the virtues of each type. So if you've started to figure out what type you might be, This will help you see the virtues that you are very strong in. Okay. And these are the ones that these are your gifts to the world that you just, without even trying, you give these virtues and you have these very strongly. I'm also going to show you how to use these to evolve your growth. I know there's something else I wanted to say about that. Your virtues, we're about to get into it. Well, it'll come to me. All right. Oh, I remember. Thank you. The question that I asked you about the world. What's one thing in the world, if everyone would just do it, would make it a better place? There's a good chance that your answer to that is going to help you identify what your type is. If you said if people would look out for each other, that's maybe you're a 6, right? You have this team membership idea. Maybe if you said everyone, if they would just love one another, they would take care of one another. Maybe you're a 2. If you said if people would investigate reality for themselves, maybe you're a 5. It can give you some indications. My husband is a 7. He's a high functioning 7. And when I first asked him that question, his response was, I said, what's one thing if everyone would just do would make the world a better place? And he said, oh, so many things. And I thought, oh, that's so 7. Like they want like a dozen, not one. They want a dozen things. Okay. So now that hopefully you have a sense of your type or you're getting there, we're going to focus on the virtues of each type. So the one we talked about, the judge, the realist, the idealist, the one not only is very strong in justice and fairness, but also righteousness, reliability, accountability, integrity. I said fairness, orderliness, idealism, and trustworthiness. So if you want a really fair and honest assessment of a situation, talk to the one. They make great effort to be fair and just and very upstanding. And those are some of the gifts of one personality type. And here we have it. The best beloved of all things in my sight is justice. So thank you, ones, for being our role model for justice. The 2, about helping, love, and care. Again, this one is very obvious to see the beauty and the virtue of. The foundation of Baha'u'llah is love. You must have infinite love for each other, preferring the other before himself. 2s are also very strong in mercy, generosity, consideration, compassion, caring, empathy, kindness, helpfulness, charity. The list could go on. And again, those are some of the top qualities that we think of when we think of virtues. So again, thank the 2s in your life for all of that they demonstrate for us, how to be selfless in our love and service to other people. The 3, the motivator, the performer, the role model, the achiever. This is a very interesting Baha'i quote, and I think it would make a lot of people uncomfortable, but that's something to reflect on. Make ye then a mighty effort that in every kind of excellence, the people of God shall surpass all other human beings, that both outwardly and inwardly they shall prove superior to the rest. And that, that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. But this 3 really does want to be all that he or she can be, and he wants to inspire that other people can be that too. Purity, immaculacy, refinement, and the preservation of health, they should be leaders in the vanguard of those who know. And that's from Abdul Baha. So not only does the 3 represent excellence, but also tact, diligence, initiative, and self-discipline. So this is what the 3 has and can help inspire and encourage in all of us. The 4, the artist, about truth and beauty and drama. Well, truthfulness is the foundation of all human virtues. It is essential. The fours have a great susceptibility to beauty. They tend to be artists and bring art into the world that hopefully uplifts us and brings us all a little closer to God. They're also very honest. They're very independent. They can be very sincere, and they can also demonstrate openness and, of course, creativity. So again, thank the fours in your community because they add depth and beauty to your initiatives. The five, grab my virtue cards here. The five, the theorist, the researcher, the brainiac, right? The five, of course, represents investigating reality for himself. Every individual member of humankind is exhorted and commanded to do this. Investigate reality for himself. The five doesn't care about what other people think or going along with the program. They want to know and understand and go deep for themselves. And the virtues that they come, in their package of fiveness: perceptiveness, wisdom, simplicity, and discernment. They can be very wise. And of course, they bring a whole lot to the world because they've done so much of their own investigation, and they can share with us their wisdom and what they've learned. The six, the loyalist. Look at this quote. Be ye as the fingers of one hand, the members of one body. Spiritual truth, I don't know if it's complex. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but it's multifaceted. So we read that quote about the three, about strive for every excellence, and it's okay to stand out was kind of the theme of that quote. But then this one is saying, be in unity. You don't need to stand out. Be as the fingers of one hand, the members of one body. Play your part in the body of mankind. So sixes are wonderful representations of not only being a team player, but humility, fidelity, brotherly love, faithfulness, humanity, cooperation, and modesty. The seven, the enthusiasts. Well, we all know that joy gives us wings, and in times of joy, our strength is more vital, our intellect keener, and our understanding less clouded. The seven, there's actually so many that they can demonstrate and show us these wonderful virtues of zeal, thankfulness, appreciation, wonder, awe, joy, cheerfulness, optimism, and gratitude. So the eight, the commander type, right? The strong one. Here we have the source of courage and power is the promotion of the word of God and steadfastness in his love. So the eights, they offer us valor, determination, purposefulness, honor, assertiveness, which is actually a virtue. It's according to the Virtues Project, it's in this stack. Assertiveness, commitment, steadfastness, decisiveness, fortitude, confidence. I said courage and resilience. So thank you, eights, for representing and demonstrating those virtues for us. And last but not least, the nine, the peacemaker. Nines are wonderful at bringing people together. They really can be true peacemakers, and they bring about unity. And we know that's very important. Be in perfect unity. Never become angry with one another. Love the creatures for the sake of God and not for themselves. You will never become angry or impatient if you love them for the sake of God. So be in unity and be forbearing. And the nines represent detachment, unity, serenity, peacefulness, flexibility, contentment, gentleness, tolerance, and mindfulness. Okay, so those were the virtues. I hope you have a sense of your type. I hope that hearing those virtues helped you to understand your innate gifts. Now I'm going to show you what to do with all this information. Okay. So all of the lines on the star of the Enneagram, that 9-pointed star, actually means something, and they're part of this whole system. So you see this arrow right now going from 1 to 7. That is the direction of what the Enneagram calls integration. We'll just call it growth, spiritual growth. When the 1 is spiritually growing, when the 1 is spiritually and psychologically healthy or moving towards a healthier state of being, that 1, that sort of rigid math teacher type personality that's very concerned with things being done the right way, that type moves to 7. Remember, 7 is about joy and appreciation and experiencing life. So when the 1 is healthy, they move through all the levels of positivity inside of the 1 personality, and then they transcend that and move towards 7. So they stop worrying so much about how things should be, and they appreciate them for how they are. They can enjoy life. And, it's good for them to dance or garden, do something that puts them in their body, allows them to just appreciate all aspects of this physical life and their family members and their loved ones. They learn to not be so concerned with perfection and appreciate things as they are. So they move towards 7. Now the 7, that, joy to be all over the place, happy-go-lucky person, as they evolve spiritually and they grow, they develop the positive qualities of the 5, the researcher, the one that works things out in their mind. So the 7, rather than going wide, they're able to go deep. And this helps them finish things. And it also helps them to develop their own thoughts and ideas. They don't rely so much on extroversion. They're able to go deeply and nurture their own spiritual, intellectual, creative life. And they're able to think deeply about things. I mentioned my husband is a 7. His favorite thing in the whole world is to write. Goes in the room by himself, closes the door, and like explores ideas. And it's a move to 5. The 5, on the other hand, who was the thinker, the researcher, the loner, the 5 goes to 8, and they develop some courage, some assertiveness. And this helps them bring all that research to the world. They have the courage to bring it to the world, maybe to defend their ideas. So it brings them out of their hermitage out into the world, and they're able to grow into their strength. The 8, on the other hand, who was the defender, the fighter, the leader, the 8 uses all of that power of defense, all of that energy to stand up for things, and they use that to help people. They use that to protect and be a defender of the victim of oppression. So the 8 moves to 2. They get in touch with love and helping other people. Now, the 2, on the other hand, who was already about love and helping other people and giving and giving and giving, the 2 moves to 4. So they start acknowledging and addressing their own emotional life and their own emotional needs. They might develop some of their creative capacities and just focus on being a very truthful an authentic person rather than being the go-to person to get everyone's needs met. And lastly, the 4, who's the artist, all about what they feel like doing. Well, it's not true that I want to get out of bed in the morning. I don't feel like it. So the 4 moves to 1, to being, they move towards principle and doing something because it's the right thing to do rather than because it's what they feel like doing. And I mentioned that 4s are often artists, and this move towards 1 actually helps them birth their ideas into the world. Just like the 5 going to 8, the 4 going to 1 helps them actually share their work because it's in principle the right thing to do, and be more engaged in the world. Now, the 3, the performer, likes to be in the spotlight. The 3 goes to 6 and becomes a loyal, humble member of a team. So rather than them needing attention to feel validated, they're able to plug in and fill the needs of the team, and it's for the betterment of everyone rather than for the betterment of themselves. So they're able to develop humility and modesty and be loving, collaborative members of a team, be it their community or their family, et cetera, et cetera. The 6, on the other hand, who had all of that ambivalence, remember, they felt safe in their group, but they also had this like inner tension and ambivalence and unease about stuff. They moved to 9, and they learned to actually relax on a deep psychological level, and they let that ambivalence and that fear go, and they trust that things do tend to work themselves out. And since they're already such loyal members of a team, they're able to use that that move towards 9 to help be movers and shakers towards unity. And the 9, who was all like relaxed and chill and laissez-faire, moves to 3. The 9 puts some energy into developing themselves or their creative ideas or their profession. They are more alert as parents. They put some of that role model energy, that strive towards excellence, into all that they do in the world. So there you have it. That is the relationship between these numbers. The 8 always goes to 2 in this in its psychological health, and the 2 goes to 4, etc. These numbers also work backwards. There's also a direction of what's called disintegration, but we're not going to get into that today. So if it hasn't been made clear already, what I'm trying to show you is, once you have an idea of what your type is, maybe you're a 1, you're like kind of a dry, people say you have a dry personality, but you're kind of funny, but in a really deadpan, dry way, and you're good with numbers, and you're not super emotional outwardly, and you're very principle driven. Maybe as a child, you were the enforcer, like, no, mom said we can't do that thing. So you know that you're a 1. Well, I've given you this tool that how you can measure your spiritual and psychological health, and also give yourself a simplified set of virtues to focus on. Because, of course, we all want all the virtues. That is the goal. But all the virtues is a lot, and it's a lot to keep track of. So what I'm proposing to us all here is focus on the set of virtues that is your direction of health. So you're a 1, focus on those 7. Focus on appreciation, joy, gratitude, zeal, optimism. As you focus on those virtues, the idea here is that without trying to, it will help you with all of that. You love and courage and assertiveness will in their own way follow if you focus on developing those set of qualities with the 7, if you're a 1, right? So identify your type, and then remember your direction of health, and then focus on the virtues of that direction of health. Again, I am a 3. I'm sitting here talking to you guys, and I have a YouTube channel. But the healthiest thing for me to do is to remember I'm a member of a team, and to be humble, modest, willing to do what the team needs type of personality, or the way I serve in my home, that it doesn't have to be about me, it's about us, and focus on humility and humanity and fidelity and loyalty. So that's my direction of focus as an example. We're almost done here, and I'll open it up for questions. Again, just the goal is, of course, all of the virtues, and this is an amazing collection. We see to fear God, to be loving, to exercise mildness, forbearance, calm, sincerity, to be amenable, clement, compassionate, to have resolution, courage, trustworthiness, energy, to strive, to be generous, to be loyal without malice, have zeal, honor, be high-minded, magnanimous, and have regard for the rights of others. So some tips for how to practice this. You identify your type, identify your direction of growth. I love the virtue cards by the Virtue Project, a very simple way to define and practice. Of course, meditation, I know it takes some time, and I don't do it all the time, but it is a way to train in not identifying so strongly with our thoughts and our compulsions. Of course, when we serve, when we engage with the world, we will be challenged, and we will see where we need to grow. And that's one of the reasons probably why we're supposed to serve. And the best tool, of course, is to be obedient to bringing ourselves to account each day, and to ask ourselves, what did I do well today, and what could I have done better? And now that you have the language of virtues in the Enneagram, you can think about it in terms of that. Was I leaning on my old ways of being? Was I being, perhaps you're a 1. Maybe you were too strict about something. I think I was overly harsh on myself or someone else. And, or maybe you're a 1 and you were like, I really enjoyed playing in the park with my kids today. Like, that was actually beautiful, and I actually really enjoyed that. So you can include that in your reflection as you bring yourself to account each day. And there's that quote, of course. And of course, ask for help. God can do miracles. So that's always a part of it too. God, please help me be more patient, etc. As John mentioned, I do have a YouTube channel, and I have a whole series on this. Where did that page go? Well, you can go to my YouTube, and I have a whole playlist on the Enneagram if you would like to spend a little bit more time with this. And of course, please sign up for 19 days. I'm going to stop screen share now. All right. Is everyone awake and with me out there?
So far, so good.
Aloha, good morning.
Hi.
Greetings from Alabama. I see you're wearing Alabama colors, so roll tide.
Right on.
Are you from Alabama by any chance, or no?
Well, my grandma was the first Baha'i in my family, and she was from Birmingham, Alabama. She declared in Florida, but she was like high school beauty queen and stuff like that. She was Miss Birmingham, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Fascinating. I lived in Birmingham for about 15 years. I was a member of the Birmingham Assembly. There's some Baha'is that still that I know that live there. Do you know Dr. James Markert or Dalton Nelson?
I don't.
Okay. Yeah, but those are people I'm familiar with in Birmingham. But right now I live in Montgomery, Alabama. I'm a
Yeah.
member of the Montgomery, Alabama LSA. So yes, I the question I have is that it seems to me that if you were a child of sexual abuse, do you have an idea what type of personality you might go to? Do you either become a 1 or a 7, or do you become a 4?
I think you could probably become almost any type, and sexual abuse is it's such a fracturing, because usually a child has to disassociate, and it causes so many things. So it can create so many complex spiritual hurdles to overcome. So I've known fives, I've known sixes. You could even become a three and try to, think that you could escape that by showing off and being perfect in like a performer type way. So I think you could become any type.
Thank you very much.
What else we got?
Well, there's a question about how this understanding of our personalities, looking at ourselves, understanding what we want and where we want to go. There's a question about how often we should be viewing ourselves in this growth process. How often should we take ourselves to account? What should we do to see that we're growing? And what do we do if we're not?
Yeah. Well, of course, whether to use the Enneagram is just whether or not it speaks to you and makes sense and seems like it's a valuable tool for you. Different tools work for different people. But we are enjoined to bring ourselves to account each day. So there's nothing unholy about reflecting on who you are and how you're operating in the world on a daily basis.
So there's a question from Sandra in the audience. She's asking, what is happening when you can't identify with one type, but with several, if not all of those?
Yeah. Well, we're all human. We're all everything. We are all nuanced individuals with a unique history. And ideally, that means you're very healthy, that you are highly integrated in your personality. And that is the goal, to be less and less identifiable. But it is important to know ourselves. And again, that question might help you pinpoint it a little bit. What would make the world a better place if everyone would just do this? I find that to be the easiest question for most people to sort of hone in on the way they're seeing the world and where their unique value set is. So the theory of the Enneagram is that everyone is a type, unless, again, except Abul Baha and the manifestations. So even if you're super healthy, there is a type that you're starting from. It's your starting point. And maybe when you're under stress, you lean on that type, like, okay, well, I'm just going to try harder then, or I'm just going to let it go and not care and shut the door to my room. Like, so maybe that's a way to identify what do you tend to do when you're under duress.
Thank you for that thought. It's hopefully, Sandra, this answered your question. It was a pretty good question, because I know a lot of people watching may think, well, what if I'm more than one, and so on. So that's a good question. Now we have a hand raised from Ralph Shoemaker. Hi, Ralph. Welcome.
Hello.
Hi, Ralph.
Hello. I think I've talked to you before, and as I'm bringing this up with weight transcend cause, this is a question though. Have you ever heard of Nikola Tesla?
Of course.
Remember he had the 3, 6, 9 triangle. If you understand that, you can unlock all the mysteries.
Ooh, wow. I was not familiar with that.
Oh, here in the Northeast, there are 2 places that have 7 valleys in them.
Ooh,
There's also Pennsylvania has 7 valleys.
neat.
But I actually did a lot I had a house full of artwork, mandalas. I read Jung, and I had Richard Reisel's book. Are you familiar with that book about the Enneagram?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I'm thinking about, well, in Rizwan, I've never been part of the community, but Rizwan, you elect 9 people. And, you correspond, the Enneagram with the 9 people elected. Now, what remind me, you remember the case that happened with Horace Hawley, Alfred Lunt, and Louis Gregory? It was kind of a little conflict, and the guardian had to step in, but I think they didn't come out and say it, but each of them kind of represented different personality type, if you're familiar with it.
That's
So,
yeah. So just to share with everyone who's listening. So the theory here is Ralph, I'm putting it in my own words, but I've heard this before, that maybe just maybe, again, there's, I'm not saying a direct correlation, but isn't it interesting that we have 9-member assemblies, and the House of Justice is 9 members, and maybe this also represents this like totality of everyone sort of representing a different type, and together they all make this whole. You shouldn't purposely vote on people like based on what type you think they are, but it's interesting to have these 9 personalities come together to make decisions.
well, what I did, I made a mandala with a 9 personality type, but I put Abdul Baha smack dab in the middle of it.
Absolutely.
Changes everything. But actually in Cortland, they had a company there called Brockway Trucks. They went on a wildcat strike, and actually they had a contract with the government in Iran. So the last Brockways were manufactured down there in Florida. And a lot of people from Cortland are in Zephyr Hills, Florida. But the main thing I got into, at the time I went back to school, I was studying about industrial justice. And environmental set was a mandala that was broken up into 9 parts. And through that, it kind of showed connections to different organs in industry. It was at a time, I think, when OSHA was becoming more prominent, and they were talking about a relationship between industry and the environment. So this is back in 1985, but I had been home pioneering in Cortland, and I read a book called Truth is One, and Hussein Jabba, who was in that book, is published in 54. He just died recently. He was 103 years old. But if you probably look out the window, you can see the snow.
Yeah, I can. It looks cold.
Well, like I said, you live in Texas. You have dust, but no rust. But John Mead's a local Baha'i here, and he's wound up working on cars like I have, and it's all dripping in your face. But it would be handy if you. Cortland's kind of like in the middle of New York. It's the Crown Center. For anybody that lives in New York, they'll notice this, that upstate New Yorkers do not really relate to New York City, if you've ever been here.
Well, we look forward to visiting one day. New York is definitely a beautiful place to visit. But Ralph, we want to thank you for sharing that information with us as it pertains to you brought up a lot of points. I think a nice one you pointed out was how Tesla would have described 3, 6, and 9 being very important numbers as it relates to magnetism, physical properties of the universe, and just mathematical understanding of how the world works. It's definitely a very prudent point. I do want to ask, and maybe it was asked already, Jacqueline, about the 3, 6, 9, and particularly number 9. I know that 3 triangles, each making up 3 sides, make up the 9-pointed star. And Enneagram is a little different, of course, and you may have covered this. I'm sorry if it's just forgetting here, but the Enneagram, where the bottom 2 points were not going as the 9-pointed star, the Baha'i 9-pointed star goes. You may have said this already, but why is it they go in a different direction, those lines?
Yeah, I did not address it. And not to compare the Enneagram and the Baha'i Faith, but it is sort of like if you have 2 minutes with someone in the elevator, how you might describe the Baha'i Faith, but then if you have a lifetime of deepening, how it's like so much more. So the Enneagram has many, many interesting elements to it, and we can go deeper and deeper, and we could do like 18 of these sessions and we'd learn something new every time. So briefly, I will say that and again, there's no like one understanding of the Enneagram in its totality, but there are some theories that 9 is actually like the primal basic type, that like every baby is essentially a 9. They have that dreamlike quality, and that so 9 is like the basic type. And then from that point, we essentially begin to fracture, because our personality is ultimately a construct of this world. It's not our soul, it's our personality. So we all kind of like start to break off from that point of 9. So that's one of the theories, that the 9 and then 3 6, that triangle inside of the whole what would you call, well, the Enneagram, that's the 9-pointed star is what Enneagram means. That triangle inside of it is like the basic core, and that's one of the theories.
Well, I thank you for that. So just for the curious audience members who may wonder, the Enneagram isn't inspired by the Baha'i Faith per se. It's not something that is the Baha'i symbol, but they still happen to share 9 points.
Yeah. Again, the Enneagram is much older than the Baha'i Faith. So that disproves that idea. But yes, I mean, I think there's we could definitely explore that there's some mystical reality to 9 as a symbol of completion and so forth.
Beautiful, beautiful. Now, as it pertains to some concepts that we spoke about earlier, about what you do and where we can find more content online, I had mentioned, for example, the book Noble Beings. How do people find that book so that they can share with their children the, spiritual concepts?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's, as you said, it's called Noble Beings, and it's very easy to find on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. Comes in paperback and hardback. Soup also has a digital copy of it. So that's the best way to find it. You can go to my website, JacquelineClaireArt.com. And here I'll drop in the chat the sign up for 19 Days of Inspiration for just the link if people want to do that.
And just a quick clarification, 19 Days of Inspiration, is that during the fast?
Yeah, so it starts March 1st. Yep.
So starting March 1st, what kind of stuff are we going to expect on 19 Days of Inspiration? I know for all of us joining late, just so you all know, there's a QR code towards the beginning of this session. So when you have a YouTube video or Facebook playing, just go to the QR code and copy it. But for those of you on the Zoom who are here with us, there's a link here in the chat. So Jacqueline, you were saying.
Absolutely. Yeah. So this is the 7th year for this project. If you're watching this and you've already signed up in years past, you don't need to sign up again. You're already in. And this is going to be a journey through the 7 valleys. I'm celebrating year 7 with the 7 valleys. So it's very simple. It's just daily art and devotional emails each day of the fast to help feed your soul. There will be writings from the faith, of course. There will be paintings. And the idea with the art is that it's a heart opener. It changes a little bit the way we look at the writings, because we've taken in some beauty and some, mysticism, so to speak, without overthinking it. And then there's a personal reflection. This year will also include some storytelling and some Zoom meets. And there's also a Facebook group that's pretty active if you want to reflect on your fast. And people who aren't fasting tend to enjoy it, especially, if they're Baha'is, but they don't fast for whatever reason, for age or health. It helps them to be connected with the fast. Or if you're an isolated believer, or you're just not a morning person, the fast is really hard for you. Sometimes it's nice to get those emails because they're uplifting, and it also is a real tangible reminder that so many people all over the world are joining you in this experience.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's really something to contemplate, this idea of going through the days of the fast and thinking about spiritual concepts. It's actually in the prayer book for Baha'is, there's this section dedicated to fasting and prayers for fasting. And these prayers really speak to us about the nature of fasting, what we should and shouldn't expect as we're speaking to God. So it really it aligns our thoughts to think of fasting in a spiritual way. And on top of that, having this program, these 19 days of inspiration, where unfortunately in the English prayer books now, we don't really have calligraphy. We don't have, unless you have a prayer book you got that was personalized by someone, you don't really have artwork in the prayer books. But it is encouraged in the Baha'i faith, specifically by Baha'u'llah, to have calligraphy, to have artwork, to elevate the writings, as it's not just merely words, it's pearls of wisdom. And this idea of 19 days of inspiration, providing these pieces to elevate the writings in such a beautiful way, really helps set the tone for the fast as a spiritual awakening and not just abstention from food.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's really important. And again, for all of you who haven't partaken, definitely 19 Days of Inspiration. It's an individual initiative that you all can take part in. It's a beautiful piece that, again, we thank Jacqueline for sharing with us. Now, we spoke about that book, Noble Beings. We spoke about the 19 Days of Inspiration. There was JacquelineClaireArt.com, where, again, like we discussed, 19 Days of Inspiration, you have artwork. Can you describe what you mean by spiritual realism? So I understand that your artwork, you've set the genre to be spiritual realism. What does that mean?
Yeah. So multiple things. One, from straightforward, it's a blend of realism and abstract expressionism. So my paintings have this almost magical quality where there's something realistic, but then also this magical or spiritual quality representing the seen and the unseen in an image. But it's also my philosophy on life, one that we should be real about our spiritual growth and, as in focus, but also honest about the challenges of walking a spiritual path. And, we're going to get blisters on our feet and bump into each other and that sort of thing. And to be honest, but stay focused on it. And also that our spiritual nature is actually what's real, and the rest is this material illusion.
That's very deep and profound, and it's appreciated, this idea of the spiritual reality that we have being the true reality and everything else being a reflection, a shadow of it. That's a real deep message, the idea of this reality we share, which is spiritual. So I think as a motif among all the initiatives you've been partaking in, it's this spiritual reality we share, and trying to share not just the positive nature that we have, but our role in shaping our own development and our own futures.
Thank you. You're so good at putting these things, encapsulating them, and you're very kind. I appreciate it. Thank you. Well said.
Well, we really appreciated that we've been able to spend time with you to go through all these really deep subjects. And again, we thank you for sharing these little gems as well, the Enneagram that we discussed, and then of course, all of the surrounding content. We hope that we can have you again to discuss another spiritual subject with us. Again, for all of you who have just joined us here today and are watching Jacqueline's presentation, we want you to please check out Clearwater Baha'is, the YouTube channel, as well as the Baha'i Center of Clearwater, the Facebook page. We have this video there. And again, you're welcome to share this video on your own channels and on your own feeds, again, with your friends and family. Jacqueline definitely doesn't share just a unique spiritual perspective, but she's also one of several Baha'is that have provided real deep insights into how we can reflect our spiritual realities day by day. And in a way, we're walking this path together. All of us are progressing differently and focusing on different things. But for sure, one thing is, I have to say, where these 19 Days of Inspiration, Jacqueline's presented this initiative she's working on. These 19 Days of Inspiration, as we are embarking on the fast coming up, whatever you do, be it this initiative that Jacqueline shared, or reading the prayer book for fasting, or reading the writings about fasting that Baha'u'llah has written extensively on, and Abdul Baha thereafter, and stories about the central figures. All of these really put into perspective the importance of fasting. We're going to be engaging in very short days in the Ayami Ha celebrations. Again, we're going to have some at the Baha'i Center. All are welcome to come to the Baha'i Center and celebrate with us on the 25th. And I think we have a coffee house as well. Just check out the Facebook page for that. But in addition to Ayami Ha and these days of joy and giving and charity, we are also going to be focusing on this fast, which ends a year and starts a new one with Nowruz, the new year. So again, not to belabor the subject, but these fasting days are so important for Baha'is. And as it relates to the initiative that Jacqueline's done for the 19 Days of Inspiration, we welcome you to be inspired by it to also do something that comes from your heart, because the idea is proliferating this spiritual warmth outwards and not just taking it in for ourselves. So with that being said, Jacqueline, again, sorry for the being verbose at the very end. I just wanted to tell people if they like this video to please like and share, and also how they can share it. And lastly, we have this link up, this EAP URL. It's very hard for me to spell it, but I will anyway, just for everyone, in case you don't want to go back for the QR code. It is with the http:// EE as in echo, EEP as in pillow, URL.com/D as in Delta, capital G as in God, capital D Delta, capital N Nancy, capital X as in xylophone, and then lowercase r as in Roger. Sorry for being so verbose again at the end here, but
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah.
So do you have any closing words, Jacqueline?
Very briefly, Sandra asked a question. What did you mean when you said you were a recovering actor? That's just a silly way to put it. For 19 years, I was in the film industry. I started in a minor market and lived in LA and stuff. So that's all that I meant by that. Just again, Clearwater, thank you for what you're doing. Thanks for having me, and everyone who joined today. I'm really glad you were here.
And we're so happy to see you maybe again soon.
Okay.
So again, keep a lookout, everybody. Have a good evening as we